everybody. Welcome to the Bituation Room on a Fantastic Friday. Thank you so much for being here. Is it fantastic? I don't think so. Are we fantastic yet? I don't think so. I hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're hanging in there. Franny's got a new haircut, perfect for summer, perfect for the new water pressure rules that Donald Trump is unveiling, focusing on the important stuff. I'm really excited because today we're going to be joined by the executive director of the immigrant rights organization Otro Lado that's been doing some amazing organizing, honestly, since the first Trump administration that we never imagined we'd have to repeat and maybe live forever. Erika Pinheiro is here. She's going to be joining me to talk about this SCOTUS ruling, but more importantly, people on the ground, what is happening to the families, to those whose visas have been overnight revoked by this absolutely unhinged Department of Homeland Security, these draconian, old, arcane policies like the Alien Enemies Act that are now being resuscitated to commit more crimes against people living in this country as they were in World War II. So it's going to get real. It's going to get interesting. So tuck in. And if you're here live, hey, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for supporting this show. As y'all know, I did take a leap / was booted from the TYT castle, but that's okay because the Frantifa's been building, and it means the world that those of you who've come on board, who've become members on YouTube, even just subscribed, it goes a long way, liking and sharing the stream, also becoming a patron. The patrones out there, you guys know who you are. You're wonderful, and you get access to that extra bonus episode on Wednesdays. Sometimes we release some of those little segments when they're really spicy on just for everybody on YouTube. And, it's really crazy because as this year started, even with Trump being elected, there was a part of me that was like, well, we'll still be able to keep our same sort of 3 days a week, one video a day, output. It's not a lot on YouTube, for the podcast audience. You guys are like, that's all I can handle. Thank you. There's a lot. Okay. So I get it. But then the news cycle, it's like every 3 hours, something is breaking and something's old when you've just put something out about it. So it is wild. And a big thank you to everyone who supported and specifically allowed me to bring on Brent Godin, who is behind the scenes, and Brent has been crushing it. Love Brent. Shout out to Brent. Thank you for everything. So thanks for bearing with me as we go through these beautiful growing pains. And as I potty train my daughter, oh my God, I am not only sick, but potty training, and I've already caved, and I'm already we're just in it. We're in it. And send me love, send me good thoughts, because it's wild, and I don't know why we can't just. I'm like on Elon. Elon's like, why don't we just push a button? We just, the button is pushed and they're potty trained. That's how I feel. And in order to get through this hump, you know what I need? I need a little CBD. And that is why I'm reading you our only sponsor for this show. One of our main sponsor, the main squeeze, Sunset Lake CBD, has a massive sale right now, guys. It started yesterday, but it's on right now. 30% off the entire site at sunsetlakecbd.com. Coupon code is 420. That's the number 420. Means nothing. Don't think about it. Orders over $100 get a free 20-count jar of Vibe gummies, which is, I think it's like a $40, $50 bottle. $150 gets you a 40-count jar of Vibe gummies. Vibe gummies are great because they're CBD and you know what else. So you can vibe off. Also, vibe off, is that a thing? 4.20% of the sales will be donated to the Last Prisoner Project. So get at it. This is the time to save. Again, flowers, gummies, smokables, coffees, tinctures, even their new vapes, 30% off. Again, the Vibe gummies are for free. So what are you waiting for? SunsetLakeCBD.com, coupon code 420. And now, as I try to maintain this state Let me bring in Executive Director of Otro Lado joining us for the first time. So happy to have her, Erika Pinheiro. Erika, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for taking the time. It has been an intense week and it's been intense, 82 days now of Trump
Feels
and
like
more.
years.
I mean, feels like years because we also hadn't, and this is another discussion, hadn't really gotten as far away from the Trump policies as I think maybe many of us wanted. But let me just ask you about the news today, about the Supreme Court yesterday dropped this 9-0 decision that said Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was unlawfully and erroneously, by ICE's own admission, sent to El Salvador, is in Secot, is married to a citizen, was legally here, was wrongfully detained and deported, that he must be returned, effectuated. And it seems like possibly now the Trump administration is trying to weasel out of this, even when, I mean, this is a hand-picked Supreme Court for the most part. This is according to Eric Lee, attorney on Twitter. The Trump administration tells the court in the Alien Enemies Act case of Abrego Garcia that it won't share information as to the steps it's taking to repatriate Abrego Garcia, effectively rejecting the court order. They're saying the court hasn't clarified what it means to facilitate or effectuate the return as it relates to this case, as plaintiff is in the custody of a foreign sovereign. Defendants request and require the opportunity to brief that issue prior to being subject to any compliance deadlines. And defendants in this case is the White House, is DHS, is the federal government. Maybe just, I know that I've hit you with a lot just up top, but like, give me a reaction to the ruling and to the possibility that the Trump administration will not comply with their own Supreme Court.
It doesn't surprise me that they're not trying to comply with this court order. In 2022, actually, the Supreme Court issued a decision that said courts cannot compel the government to comply with the law when they violated immigration laws. So we're already in a situation where the executive can violate immigration laws basically with impunity. I was actually surprised to see this decision, but the implications of having a decision not like this would have been really dangerous because this guy was not deportable, sent to a foreign gulag. And if the Trump administration had not been ordered to bring him back, that could happen to any one of us. It could happen to a US citizen, and then the Trump administration can just say, they're in the custody of a foreign sovereign. We don't have to bring them back. So I think it's really important that the Supreme Court, especially unanimously, has ordered the Trump administration to bring this man back. But the fact that they're dragging their feet or trying to weasel out of it absolutely does not surprise me. And I think it's really a preview of what we can expect during this administration. I really think they're going to try to defy the courts in any way they can.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. Yesterday, his wife, Jennifer Vasquez Sura, was on Capitol Hill, and I was heartened to see that she actually met, or that, electeds, Democrats specifically, met with her, because I think a lot of us are asking, where the hell are the Dems on this?
Where have they been?
Yeah.
Where have they been? Even during the Biden administration, it wasn't all, roses. It was the immigration policy of the Biden administration was really bad in a lot of ways, especially toward asylum seekers. We saw Kamala's campaign was really just like tough on the border and more restrictions. And so I think the Democrats have really bought this like asylum seeker as invader or immigrant as invader rhetoric and don't seem to really be standing up to the Trump administration. But even if they did, would the Trump administration listen to Congress? I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like they feel emboldened with the mandate of 49% to do whatever they want. Here's Caroline Leavitt. Let's see what she had to say regarding all this.
Real quick, the president of El Salvador is coming to the White House on Monday. Does President Trump want him to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia with him?
The Supreme Court made their ruling last night very clear that it's the administration's responsibility to facilitate the return, not to effectuate the return. I believe the Department of Justice just filed another brief in the lower court. I would defer you to that for any updates. But as you mentioned, President Bukele will be here at the White House on Monday to talk about the cooperation that is at an all-time high. And we very much appreciate President Bukele and El Salvador's cooperation and the repatriation of El Salvadorian gang members who the previous administration allowed to infiltrate our country.
Right. And we just got done saying, in fact, things like Title 42. Biden continued to use it. He was sued also over using it to prevent asylum seekers from safely being able to live in the U.S. I mean, so there's so much I want to talk to you about, but just Abrego Garcia is Salvadoran. He had an asylum case saying, look, if he is deported back to El Salvador, he could end up precisely in some situation like in Secot, being swept up and accused of being a gang member, or the victim of gang violence. If there is gang violence, we know that not everyone in Secot is a gang member, but just like this level of callousness is, I think, something we haven't seen. And the fact that you've got all the Supreme Court justices saying, this is not lawful. Can you just remind folks what it means to be lawfully in the United States, but still not have, a green card or, obviously your papers, or not be naturalized?
There's actually a lot of types of legal status that are not even a path to citizenship. So I think in the case of Kilmar, I think he had withholding of removal, which is kind of like asylum light. Basically says that you cannot be returned to your home country, but you also can never become a resident or citizen of the United States. And you actually can never leave the United States. You just get a work permit every year. So it's a very fragile form of immigration relief, but it is something that is supposed to prevent you from being sent back to your home country. And this is something, again, that I kind of blame the Democrats for, because they've created all of these like parole programs, even DACA, like never creating a path to citizenship for DACA. It's left literally millions of people in a situation where their status can just be taken away from them. Yeah. And it really makes me upset when I hear people say, like, why didn't they just apply for citizenship? There's literally no way for a lot of these people to apply for citizenship. There is no path to citizenship. There's just all of these very liminal, very temporary types of legal status that really create a permanent underclass that can, have their safety taken away at any time.
Yeah. And in fact, we just on Wednesday, I was reporting on this, where we're talking about DHS revoking nearly 1 million, basically like legal status for nearly 1 million people who are here either under TPS or currently entered under specifically the CBP-1 app, which was designed to try and track. I mean, I know that there are critiques, massive critiques of that, but was designed to track and monitor and really vet anyone coming into this country. Can you just talk about how these vetting mechanisms are now being weaponized against immigrants and what the impact of that is?
Absolutely. So with CBP-1, it really created an orderly system for people to apply for asylum or another type of relief at the US-Mexico border in particular. I definitely had a lot of critiques of it because not everyone had access to it. It wasn't in that many languages, like disabled people couldn't use it. We actually sued over the requirement that CBP-1 be used for people who wanted that path to citizenship through asylum. But the people who did wait for CBP-1 in many cases were waiting in Mexico for up to a year, living in squalid encampments, their kids maybe not in school, just like really horrible conditions, subject to violence, subject to trafficking, just to do things the right way. So we're talking about a population that sacrificed a lot to follow the law, and now that's being weaponized against them. And I would say too, for TPS or DACA, people did not need to register for those forms of relief. They could have just stayed in the US undocumented, but again, wanted to follow the law or wanted to enter on parole. And, now it's like even people who are paying taxes, right? The IRS is now going to share information with immigration So basically, we're punishing everyone who has tried to be a model citizen and tried to have that path to citizenship. And it's really hard to know what to tell clients at this point, because now there's even another registration requirement for undocumented people. And I don't know what to tell people. Like, if you go register yourself, are you going to be disappeared to El Salvador? Are you going to be deported to a country that's not even yours? And again, like, working with these individuals, all they want to do is follow the law, and all they want to do is gain permanent status in the US. And it's really hard to tell people how to do that safely now.
Well, can you tell me, I mean, I want to talk about the stuff, I mean, actually, just briefly, let's just throw this up here. This is today. Social Security are listing thousands of migrants as dead to prompt them to, quote, self-deport. This kind of cruelty, I guess just try to sort of explain, like, even if people are issued Social Security numbers, that does not mean they're not voting with that. They're not citizens with that, but they have been paying into a system they might not ever reap the benefits of. Maybe just this, like, using IRS and Social Security data to go after, immigrants here. Like, can you just explain that a little bit and yeah, exactly. And, like, sort of dispel the myths around this idea that everyone who has a Social Security number is somehow, like, living off the fat of the land?
So you get a Social Security number when you get a work permit. And usually it's a restricted Social Security number that just you can only use when you have the work permit. And then once you get a more permanent status, like asylum or permanent residency, they remove the restrictions on your Social Security number. So just given how incompetent the Trump administration is, I can guarantee you that they are going to take Social Security numbers away from people who rightfully have them.
Yeah.
Probably naturalized citizens, probably lawful permanent residents, or people who still have valid work permits based on something other than parole, for example. So I can guarantee this is going to be a complete mess. But just more broadly than that, immigrants pay billions and billions and billions of dollars into Social Security. They make Social Security way more solvent than it would be if we didn't have them paying into it. I think the Republicans are in for a rude awakening when immigrants stop paying taxes. And just in terms of benefits, like, you're not eligible for benefits unless you're a permanent resident or a citizen. Asylum seekers are not eligible for benefits. Undocumented people are not eligible for benefits. Like, if you consider them sending their kids to school a benefit, there's something wrong with you. Like, if you want to take that away, I'm sorry. But other than that, they're not getting welfare. They're not getting food stamps. Like, they're not getting any of that. They're just, again, like you said, paying into a system they may never benefit from.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think it's really important because, it's amazing. Like, the average, God, I don't know, the myth around Americans is that we hate bureaucracy, and there's so much red tape and everything. Try living a day in the immigration system. I mean, in the clients that you speak with, the statuses, the meetings, the this or that, and we're hearing, and we know so many of the people who are being disappeared now, who are being swept up, were checking in with immigration officials regularly so that we know, should they, and again, I hate to play into the myth, be up to any illicit activity, that would be known about, right? Their whereabouts, their homes, their activities, people are being picked up on the job, which means they literally have a job. They're going to, this is not a drug dealer. This is not, anyone who is extorting somebody, because it's easy, right? And it's easier to do that. And the Trump administration is, if not cruel, and they don't care. I did just want to ask you, when you're hearing from people about this idea of self-deporting, I know that, in Mexico, you've got President Claudia Sheinbaum saying, we welcome, our Mexican citizens back with open arms to help them reintegrate, whatever it is. Like, I guess I'm just like, what are you hearing from people? Is there an idea of, like, it's not safe here, or no, it's less safe for where I'm from?
There's definitely people who, especially Mexicans, who, like, maybe they've worked in the United States their whole life. They have some money saved up. They can live a better life in Mexico at this point. And the president isn't a total fascist. So that's also helpful. So there has, and this has been true for years, there's more migration of Mexican people from the US back to Mexico than from Mexico to the United States. I think that's been true for maybe a decade or so. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's around that amount of time. Just anecdotally, I have seen more people moving back. And what's interesting is I'm seeing a lot of dual nationals, like U.S. citizen / Mexican citizen kids of people who went to the United States for a better life, now realizing that they can have a better life in Mexico. So that's been really interesting to see. Yeah. But there's a lot of people who cannot go home, right? They fled persecution. They fled torture. Like all the Haitians, the Venezuelans, the Nicaraguans, the Cubans who have parole that is now being revoked. We work a lot with the Haitian population, and the stories I hear of what people are going through and what people have gone through in their home country is just, it's hard to believe. I mean, I believe them, but it's really hard to believe that people can go through that and come out the other side. You know, we talk to people who still have their kids stuck there or other family members stuck there, people who've lost children or other family members to violence there. And the thought of just ripping away their ability to survive and sending them back to a place like that is just unbelievable to me. It's so heartless. And it's obviously racist, right? They're targeting people from non-white countries, but yeah, I mean, people can't go home in a lot of cases. So, you know, if their status is taken away, they're probably just going to try to write it out undocumented, you know, to deal with all the fines that are being implemented, deal with their social security number being taken away. And it's like you said, a lot of these people are working. So like, what position does that leave them in now?
Yeah. I mean, and to say nothing of all the fear mongering around, you know, they're eating the cats and dogs and all that. And, but I wanted to ask you, like, what is it? Just, I should have started with this, but I want people to know what Otro Lado does and who you're working with. And then I was really moved by specifically the work in Panama that you guys had done. I believe I donated. I was like, I really wanted to, and I believe everyone should. But, you know, immigrants deported to Panama without any belongings, any family. I believe there were a lot of mostly Asian immigrants, but maybe explain what Otro Lado is doing, what you guys are up to.
Yeah, so we have a really close colleague who lives in Panama City, and she's worked with us over the years. And she called one day and was like, you know, those people who were sent to the concentration camp in the middle of the jungle? Like, yeah, well, they just dropped them all off in the middle of Panama City with nothing. So basically, as we know, the Trump administration sent several hundred extra continental migrants, which are just mostly people not from Latin America. There were some Colombians in the group as well. Mm-hmm. Panama agreed to accept them. Panama built a horrific encampment in the middle of the Darien. So people were initially locked as prisoners in a hotel, and then they were sent to this basically concentration camp. And we heard from a couple Colombians who were deported from there that the treatment was just so undignified. Like when they were given food, it was just thrown on the ground. They had to get it from the ground. There were kids there, a lot of children there. And so they were there for a few weeks. They deported anyone who was Latin American. And then I don't know why, but the Panamanian government just decided to close the camp and drop the rest of the people off in Panama City. So UNICEF is helping the families with kids, but the adults were just left like nothing, no money, no belongings. They don't speak Spanish. And so we were able to raise some money to help pay for shelter and food and medical care, because some of them have chronic health conditions, but also people have gotten like dengue fever, like just from being in the jungle. And yeah, or just even from being in detention, people got sick. And so, so they've been there now for 30 days. We've been trying to get third countries to accept them. No country has stepped up, except fingers crossed for Colombia, that might take people. But again, like, they don't speak Spanish. Most of them, they're from Afghanistan, Iran. There's Cameroonians, some people from Ghana, Russia, China. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of the countries, but they're just lost. I mean, they can't go home.
Yeah.
And they can't apply for asylum in Panama. As it stands, no one's no other country has committed to taking them. They have 60 more days in Panama. They got an extension on their visa. And we're scrambling to try to find other countries to take them right now.
And this is work that you all are doing, not, I mean, there is obviously some, but it's like all on the nonprofit sector to kind of fill in the gaps, because obviously the federal government's not doing anything about this, which is insane. And I just want to mention, it is insane, you know, to say that there is no jurisdiction in El Salvador. Oh, because it's El Salvador, and we paid them $6 million, which is nothing, honestly, but far too much to keep what could be 90% of innocent people. I mean, no one, even if they did commit a crime, should be just disappeared and sent to a maximum detention center like that without any due process. But like, the idea that Trump's hands are tied. I mean, no one's talking about Panama, but it is wild to be like, okay, well, how much money did you receive to take care of these folks? And then you just like dump them and you're like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. should take them back. And in fact, some of them still have spouses detained in the United States who they might never see again. So we're trying to explore some possibility for some of them to come back to the United States. And in fact, there's a couple guys who refused to leave the concentration camp until they were sent back to the United States. So I think they're still there. But really, the U.S. has the responsibility to take these people back. They were legitimate asylum seekers. I heard the administration say, like, none of them are afraid to go home when they sent them to Panama. And from speaking to these folks, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Can I ask you, because I'm getting back to sort of like why we're in this place, something you said kind of echoed an interview I just did with attorney Michael Leroff of the 5-4 podcast, talking about, look, we're not at the beginning of the constitutional crisis. We're at the end of it. Mm-hmm. And the way that the Trump administration is able to skirt the law, I mean, you mentioned, well, that tracks, given that the Supreme Court, even though they handed this ruling down, also allowed them to avoid specifically immigration law. So you're just seeing that play out. We are far down the path of authoritarianism. And again, we don't have an opposition party. And if anything, we have a party that, I mean, Biden tried to pass this bipartisan bill, which sure, there were some good things in it, maybe, you know, making the immigration courts a little bit, giving them a little bit more money, but ultimately was just as draconian. And, you know, it's like we've been pulled so far to the right on this issue. And I think, you know, given the moment we're in and giving sort of where we think about what are we fighting for if and when we get out of this moment, what do you think we're fighting for if and when we get out of this moment when it comes to immigrant rights in this country, in this hemisphere, in this just visionary for me, because we need it at this moment?
I don't know if I'll see the end of what we're experiencing now in my lifetime. Hopefully our kids will, because it really has gone down such a dark path to the point where immigrants are not seen as human beings anymore. I mean, no one's even talking about the fact that all of these deportations, a lot of them are family separations. Everyone was really mad about that a couple of years ago, but now it's like not even discussed. And I mean, I heard you talking about you have a kid. I do too. Imagine being separated from your child. Like, it's just the worst thing anyone can imagine. And no one's even considering that. We're just talking about immigrants in a vacuum, right? So it's hard to think that we would get from where we are now to a humane immigration system anytime soon. But the thing I always think about, because my parents are also immigrants to the United States, and I grew up in the US school system, and we're always taught that representative democracy is like the end all be all of political systems. And, you know, we talk about China being communist and how bad that is. Mm-hmm. And the thing that always strikes me is like, okay, representative democracy is the best, but you have millions and millions of people in the United States by design who will never be able to participate in that system. So, like, for me, the ideal is really, I mean, if you still believe in representative democracy, is to have a system where people have a path to citizenship. If you live in a society, you should have a say in what goes on in it. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, that just as a basic tenet, but like the whole border militarization thing is a money-making scheme. And so
Right.
that's why I'm saying it's like hard to think about the way out of this, because there's so much money, billions and billions of dollars in violence against immigrants. And so,
Sure.
yeah,
And it's part of the military industrial complex that's been now waged on the southern border on immigrants, the mass tracking. You've got Palantir involved. You've got other
Mhm.
companies involved. Everyone wants a piece of this new, totalitarian fascist state, techno-fascist state, which is really truly disgusting. I mean, I definitely think a pathway, but really amnesty. Like that's what the right is like. Oh, they want amnesty. Yeah, I do. I do actually. I want open borders. Actually, like that's
I
just me.
know. Yeah. That's what I was going to say too. When they're like, oh, open, are you for open borders? I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
because
We should all be able to move.
exactly.
Yeah.
I want people to move as freely as capital is able to move. It's what is just. These are workers. They and I think that's the other question, and maybe where I draw some hope is looking at the times where the labor rights movement finally, and at the with lots of pressure and organizing from immigrant workers, was able to see the immigrant labor and whatever citizen American labor, if there is a distinction, as a one and the same kind of fight. And so we're really in this moment where we're talking a lot about all right, labor leaders, and maybe there's a general strike on the horizon, and yay, Starbucks, and it's great. But I also feel like without this piece of looking at the exploitation of immigrant labor, or how integral, no matter what your status is, immigrants are to this, I feel like we're kind of leaving like half the train behind, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, it's the other thing too is just a lot of the pro-immigrant rhetoric is really focused on like economic contributions and people are
Right.
workers and the
Right.
economy needs people, but it's also like they're human beings, right? Like they've in many cases moved to survive, but even if they hadn't, even if they're just like economic migrants or they're just moving for a job or a better life, like who cares?
Right.
You shouldn't have to suffer to live in the United States. You should just be able to move wherever you want to move. And so, yeah, I just try to stay away from like only valuing immigrants as an economic entity, because that also contributes to the dehumanization of the population, I think.
Right. Absolutely. Seeing them. I mean, it's almost, yes, it's seeing anyone through like macroeconomic, I always push back whenever people talk about Palestinians only in this like geopolitical, what does Iran, what does, it's the same kind of level of dehumanization. Oh, you're not people, you're just kind of pawns. You don't have autonomy, hopes, dreams, families, roots, businesses, you're just kind of, being used by capital to move around. So I appreciate that critique, and I think that's important. And I also think that, look, this is a messaging problem for me, and I do think it's similar to the way I think about like trans rights, but really it's just like no human is illegal, period. Like that's it. It's always been that. It still is that for me. And the more we play into the like good immigrant, bad immigrant, right way, wrong way, criminal, non-criminal, they've given up the entire game. They know.
Exactly.
You hear Stephen Miller, Caroline Leavitt, they've never distinguished between law-abiding immigrant and, hardened criminal. In fact, what they are doing is making, and I said this on Wednesday, making it far more dangerous in immigrant communities, giving rise to far more, if you're worried about far more illicit activity, pushing people to never call the cops if they actually see something, because they live in the shadows. And so it's only making things more precarious. And again, we're kind of in this moment of like, Trump is doing the self-fulfilling prophecy thing to make fascism even more palatable and appetizing. And Democrats are not pulling away from that in a way that they should be.
No. And I'm past being disappointed, because I think after the first Trump administration, when Biden, do you remember the first Biden campaign? He ran on like the dream pro-immigrant platform. They were going to bring deported people back. They're going to reunify all the families. Like we work reunifying families who were separated during the first Trump administration. There's still probably like 800 of them still separated from their kids. So he didn't do all that. And to go from like, we're going to bring back the deportees, we're going to get rid of remain in Mexico. Remember that, where they were making everybody wait in Mexico for their asylum hearings, but then you create CBP1 and make people wait for a year in Mexico anyway. And this was something I wanted to bring up too, is this like externalization of the border, which has been going on now for decades. And this idea of just like making people wait in Mexico, strengthening the southern Mexican border, deporting people to Panama and El Salvador and other countries. Like third country deportations have been going on for years now. It's just kind of like not sending people to Sikat necessarily, but like
Right.
this has been going on for years. So like kind of like what you were mentioning earlier, this is like the end of a progression that has been happening for a very long time. And very few, if any, Democrats have spoken up against it.
Right. I mean, it's like, this is the cruelty, and we knew it was going to happen. And yeah, I mean, I really thought that, I mean, Trump's performance in the debates, or not the debates, the town halls in Las Vegas, awful. But Kamala Harris's were also bad. You have a woman in tears saying that she's worried for her mother. And like, I don't know what else you need to do. Like, how many people do you need to see separated from, and there was recent video of a woman, ice breaks through the car door to
Right.
grab her mother. And this woman, I mean, she must be, you know, in her teens, 20s, but you hear her reduced, you know, she's a little baby. Just her mom, you know, and it's just like, and that's happening everywhere. It's happening over and over again. You know,
Mhm.
it's interesting that in Tom Homan's hometown, successfully, the community was able to come out and stop it. So, I mean, and I do think a lot of that community use their privilege. So just to say,
Yeah.
like, and I know you guys also facilitate some volunteer opportunities, so I just want to ask you about that too. But people, especially if you have status, especially if you have white privilege, especially if you have a little extra time, like, use that, because you can, you know, you can apply pressure. This administration isn't, I do think they aren't totally above pressure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just, yeah, I mean, I think you are right. I think economic pressure is probably a little bit more effective.
Sure.
Than I really don't think they care about the lives of immigrants or care about anyone who cares about the lives of immigrants. And something, I think what you're saying about like using your privilege is so important, because we are about to see immigrant rights activists, and we're already seeing it, right? People who are immigrants and activists being disappeared. And we're about to see persecution like we saw it in the first Trump administration to a lesser degree. But those of us who've been on the front lines, I expect a DOJ investigation. I expect to get hauled before Congress, because they've made caring about immigrants a crime. They've made helping people a crime at this point.
I think, I don't know if there are more, but Alfredo Juarez Zeferino, Jeanette Vizquera, those are two immigrant rights activists who've been detained, I believe.
Yep.
So this is exactly what you're saying. It's like, and thank you for even speaking to me. You know, I mean, I think people are rightfully scared. But also, this is the work that you do. Before you go, how can people, what are you suggesting folks do? Donate, just sign up for your mailing list, or how can people get involved?
Well, we just had $2 million cut of our federal funding. So definitely any donations would be very useful right now. Specifically, our funding was cut to represent unaccompanied children in court. So we are not going to abandon those kids. We just have to figure out a way to pay to continue representation. So our website is alotrolado.org. So you can go there and donate. There's also a volunteer page. You can sign up to volunteer either in person at the border or remotely. We have plenty of volunteer opportunities for folks. And I would also just suggest, like, I know a lot of places have rapid response networks locally. Just get involved in your local community. If you see ICE, say something, scream so your neighbors don't come out of the house, but really getting involved in those local organizing efforts is so important, because these are your neighbors. These are people in our community that deserve protection. And if you are especially a white American citizen, like, get your butt out there on the line, because there's other people have a lot more to lose than you do. So,
yeah. Thank you so much, Erika Pinheiro, Executive Director of Otro Lado, that's just done some incredible work. Please donate to them if you can. Again, we want to make up for that money, and we shouldn't have to, but we will, because we support all the work that you're doing. We should also fight for, federal funding to not be cut. But is there anything else that you wanted to add before I let you go?
No, just thank you so much for having me. It was really great talking to you. And yeah, I just encourage people to get involved, and you can sign up to volunteer with us if you'd like to do that. We'd really appreciate it.
Awesome. So
Right.
so good to meet you. Thanks for coming through. I'm such a big admirer of Al Otro Lado. I know people who volunteered with them before in the past, in the first Trump administration, and just being on the, I believe it was in Tijuana, and they've just been stalwarts. So look, there's 800 families still waiting to be reunited since the first Trump administration. So that's only going to increase. We've got to support these organizations. I dropped the link. I'll put it in the description if you're listening to this, but I dropped the link in the chat so folks can holler at that. Hopefully it works. I ride solo here on the weekends, on Friday. But yeah, man, it's there's also part of me that's like, I wish that the people who have been wrongfully detained in Secot know that there are folks outside, that the Supreme Court even did this ruling, but also knowing that Trump may not comply with it. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's better they don't know. I'm not sure. And the other thing that I've talked about a lot on the show is the way these fascists, these bro-oligarchs love each other. Like, they're the real globalists. I mean, they love Nayib Bukele because Bukele is doing mass sweeps of neighborhoods where there is suspected gang activity. I mean, they're doing stop and frisk, but stop and detain forever. I mean, it is like the dream of so many Republicans, and let's be honest, some Democrats who are like, yeah. The biggest problem with cities is, brown people and the eyesore of homelessness. Let's just sweep them all up. Like, he's doing that in El Salvador instead of actually dealing with the root causes of things like inequality, gang violence, lack of job opportunities, right? It's what made, again, I am so struck by Kristi Noem standing in front of the Secot prisoners saying, don't come to this country. But Kamala Harris also saying, don't come to this country. And yes, this is the difference between Democrats and Republicans. One is far better. But the other one's message, what is that, right? Like, that's do not come is not a message. What are you doing to work with countries that have things like job programs, right? That even, and again, it is the failed drug war. How many decades are we into this? How many more do we need to prove that it is killing people, that it is maiming people, it's terrorizing communities? And now Donald Trump wants to drop drones or use drones and drop bombs on cartels. Good luck. Cool. Let's make Mexico Afghanistan. It'll be great. So yeah. And you guys know that, we've talked about on the show very seriously about cartel violence. Yohan Grillo, whose Substack I super recommend and whose books I recommend, he comes on, he tells me all about, these really dangerous cartels, and it's really effing scary. But the way through that is programs, is pathways to legalization, is, not more militarism, is not more weaponry, is stopping the sale. His last book, stopping the sale of weapons from the United States into Mexico and beyond. That would do wonders. If we think we've got gun violence problems in this country, imagine the narco violence in, south of the border. So we will see. But Darkins 1231, talk about the 3 Afghan girls attacked in Houston. I've not heard about them. See what I'm saying about the insane news cycle? Council on Islamic Relations CARE called on the Houston Independent School District to take urgent, transparent action following the alleged violence of targeting 3 Afghan girls at the Paul Revere Middle School. The girls were sitting at their lunch table when they were surrounded and physically assaulted by at least 20 students. Holy shit. The attackers reportedly used pencils to stab the girls. One student was beaten so severely she became unresponsive to teachers and was taken to Texas General Children's Hospital in the medical center. Apologies. Oh my, like, we imagine that, that Trump's cruelty doesn't have any impact in our culture. You know what I mean? Like it's just MAGA. It's the cult. It's the weirdos. It's what? No. These are children. Why do you think bullying is on the rise? Be best. No, man, be worse, dude. That's what's happening. And it all stems from our own actions, whether they be against immigrants, whether they be against Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims. Apparently they were wearing hijab. Jesus. This is evil, evil, evil stuff. Here's just an image of it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to play this without a bunch of ads. But thank you for that. I appreciate you filling me in on it because I hadn't heard. Rachel Atwood, cruelty is the point, losing impact from overuse. Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's fascism. But it is cruelty. I mean, and we have to understand, like, no more parsing. Stop parsing. Anyone who's parsing should lose all of your respect right now. Okay? They're not parsing. You shouldn't parse. Rachel Atwood, what's up with Sean Fain 100% embracing tariffs? You know what? I'm going to do this story on Tuesday because I got to dig into it. I know that Sean Fain had an interview with David Sirota at the Lever, and apparently, look, the reason I've been cool on Sean Fain is because, like, he's starting to do the Sean O'Brien thing. The Seans are starting to merge, so I've been a little bit like, I'm going to take a moment from Sean Fain, but maybe we should talk about that on Tuesday. It's a good story, and if not, we'll do it on Wednesday because I think it'll be important. The instructor, Trump had the billionaire oligarchs at the White House bragging about how much money they made during the stock market crash. Disgusting. Oh, yeah. Charles Schwab. Literally the Charles Schwab. Like Mr. Money. Mr. Moneybags. The Monopoly man was there. Robert says the Dems failed every opportunity to stop the worst of the Republicans' excess. Bad Dem policies need awful Republicans. Robert, you said this before, and I think it's always true and always timely and always important to remember. We need to stop. We just really need to stop with buying into the lie that there is an invasion, that there's massive border crossings, and start buying into the truth that people should be able to move, should be able to live with their families, should be able to seek better lives. And let us look in the mirror as to who and why their home countries are suffering in the way that they are. I want to talk about this one story and then get out of here. I gotta keep it shorter today. But Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson, and others, it seems, had a meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu was visiting, and according to the Jewish Insider, which I think is the only source that we have on this, Netanyahu met with these podcasters. Now, the reason it's interesting is because these are also people who received out and out Russian money. Now, we're at a time where, Zionist money and pro-Israel money is flowing through all of these organizations, all of these people. It's been flowing through just our general culture in terms of, hey, do you want a free trip to Israel if you're Jewish or not, right? Someone I know years ago, I was like, oh, he was a DJ, and he was like, you want to go to Israel? And I'm like, oh, actually, I don't really want to go on a propaganda trip. Thank you, bye. But it's like, whoever you are, get a free trip, come through. The propaganda is on all levels that Israel has known for many years now, for decades now, that they need to do the job of making themselves look good. And so it is very sus that right-wingers and right-wing mouthpieces that received Russian money to basically peddle lies about Ukraine and cast doubt on the Russian instigated war with Ukraine, are now meeting with Bibi Netanyahu because, the wheels are coming off. The curtain has been lifted. Zionism is now a dirty word, even in just general apolitical people. People don't even really check in, have seen dead children on their feeds, are like, what is going on? Why are we supporting this? This seems bad. I didn't really have an opinion of Israel before, but it sure as shit is not good right now. And so this was the reporting. Netanyahu pushes back on anti-Israel trends in meeting with podcasters, which I think is very interesting because it means he was approached about these very things. Israel Prime Minister, and it matters that go away. Oh no. Hang on 1 second. Franny's going to figure this out. Okay. Good old Pocket. I really want Pocket to sponsor my show because I love Pocket. Let's see if I can get around this stupid paywall here. Netanyahu tried to push back against anti-Israel trends in the right-wing media world by holding a briefing in the Blair House for podcasters and other media figures. Among those in attendance were Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, random, but I guess he's got podcasts, writers Bethany Mandel, David J. Harris Jr., influencers Jessica Krause, commentary senior editor Seth Mandel, and Federalist editor-in-chief Molly Hemingway. Okay, so maybe not good old Betty Johnson. In addition to Netanyahu, his diplomatic advisor Ophir Falk, and an Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Yishol Leiter, were present on the Israel side. Poole expressed concerns about increased anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in the pro-Trump podcasting space. You mean Candace Owens? Also anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, not the same thing, according to sources in the room. Poole famously had Kanye West on his podcast, and the rapper walked out mid-interview after Poole pushed back on his anti-Semitic comments. Responding to Poole, Netanyahu said that is the reason he invited the group to meet with him. Poole argued that there is a Qatari op to manipulate social media algorithms to make anti-Semitic and anti-Israel episodes appear to receive far more views than, say, tips for picking up women, which is so funny that he would say that, in order to incentivize podcasters and YouTubers to produce more anti-Semitic content. This is like all over the place, my guy. Netanyahu, however, was non-committal in his response, saying only that it's possible. The prime minister emphasized in the context of Qatar as well as Iran that Israel and the U.S. share the same adversaries. Iran, Netanyahu said, wants to destroy both the U.S. and Israel. Hemingway asked Netanyahu several questions about Israel's planned response to the Iran nuclear threat, including whether Israel wants a ground war with Iran, yes, and whether Israel expects America to help fight such a war. Netanyahu said Israel never asked America to put boots on the ground in its defense and does not plan to. Netanyahu insisted President Trump knows what he's doing. The prime minister spoke extensively about the deep state in Israel at a time when he's seeking to fire the head of Shin Bet. Oh, yeah. Shin Bet, who has come out against Netanyahu ultimately, and is just specifically for breaking the ceasefire. And his justice minister want to fire the attorney general, with whom Netanyahu has clashed repeatedly since returning to office in 2022. Remember that even Israelis who are maybe on board with the war, the genocide, they know Netanyahu is a criminal. They were protesting him because he is like a white collar criminal. He has ignored, again, all these other entities within Israel, like Shin Bet, like his own, whether it's justice, whether it's, intelligence. But I love the idea that there is a Qatari op. We know what they're talking about, right? We know what they're talking about. They're talking about Al Jazeera Media Network. I worked there for many years, 5 years. I worked at AJ Plus. And yes, they've been doing wall-to-wall coverage of Gaza, what's been going on. We know that Bassam, who has been reporting live from Gaza, AJ Plus was working with them. They won an Emmy for that reporting. Hi, this is Bassam, or I believe this is Bassam from Gaza. They regularly target not only Al Jazeera journalists, of whom they have murdered in recent days and weeks, but also the heads of Al Jazeera, whether it's in the West Bank or, well, specifically in the West Bank. I don't think there was a head in Gaza, or there might have been at some point. But they've blocked Al Jazeera from getting in there. So it's funny that he's like, well, maybe that's the case. It's like, you say that all the time, that you think that Al Jazeera is a Qatari op. It's just a state-funded media outlet. Like, that's all it is. It's fine to say it's a state-funded media outlet. I personally think it happens to be one of the good ones. It's been award-winning. I know great people who work there. Do I like everything the Qatari government does? No, of course not. Was anyone ever telling me what to say? No, they were not. That's just real talk. But the idea that like they are artificially inflating the anti-Semitic, nah, man, the genocide is doing that. It's like the same thing that Donald Trump was like, there's so much death in Gaza. Wow, everyone's dying. It's like, your man is doing the killing. Right? The reason that people are watching is because it keeps on happening. Whether it's hospital workers, medics being zip-tied and murdered, shot in the head, bullets in children. The New York Times did a story about that. Sniper bullets in the heads of children. I mean, I don't understand how you can't watch that and not just like, hey, any soft Zios, any liberal Zionists still following me, still waiting for the apology. You just have to lead with an "I'm sorry." You can go from there. But anyway, that's Tim Pool. They're literally having this meeting. My question is, how much money did they then offer them? But Tim, he acknowledges that the meeting happened. He said, just left a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu in D.C. Interesting discussion. I will discuss more tomorrow night on Timcast IRL. I mean, I kind of feel like even though it was maybe a stupid thing to say, like at least Tim like asked a question instead of, it was like, hey, it's kind of getting hard to launder your bullshit. But what do you think? I want to just share. I haven't watched this and it's long. So let me just share a little bit of it and see what he has to say about the meeting.
Currently, there is fake news about me. So last night I wasn't here. I got late word that I was invited to a private roundtable meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It was under what's called Chatham House rules. For those that are not familiar, this means that you cannot reveal anybody who attended, nor attribute anything to any one individual, as they can deny it, and they would. However, what I love about what the White House is currently doing, when you bring together a bunch of influencers and podcasters who don't know much about journalism culture, whatever you want to call it, not that we respect it tremendously, most people.
Wait. I love that he just kind of dunked on himself. When you bring a bunch of people together, podcasters who don't really know about journalism, like, okay, thank you for admitting that.
Didn't know what Chatham House meant. So with all due respect, it's funny because they bring us into the Blair House, which is where Netanyahu was staying. And immediately people are walking around with their cameras, their phones up. They actually took our phones from us. And I legit thought they would maintain Chatham House rules, meaning you can't quote the prime minister, you can't quote his officials and the other people who were there, but you can report what was said generally. If you wanted an official quote on a specific matter, you would then ask an official once the meeting was wrapped, and they'd provide you the exact quote. Or they would just say outright, like, we ain't putting our quotes on that one. So the story that comes out, which basically violated whatever, I was going to talk about what we went there for a reason. This story from Jewish Insider says Netanyahu pushes back on anti-Israel trends in a meeting with podcasters.
What was the reason that you went there? Tell me the reason. What was it to do? Were you going to strike a deal? You going to get some money? You going to get $100,000 a video?
I don't know if the individual who wrote this, Lahav Harkov, was actually there, but this is wrong. It's fake news. And people are now spreading fake news about me because I'm going to go ahead and say as arrogantly as I can to everyone else who was there. I hope you all hear me because I'm saying this somewhat facetiously. I think I was the only one that asked a real question. Now that I've pissed off all the other journalists and individuals who were there, most people were asking what I would describe as, I don't know, I felt like pretty obvious questions. Is there going to be a war with Iran? Do you think the nuclear talks are going to be good? The Trump is going to be talking with you? Will it work out for you? What's the concern? What's going on with your prime ministership or whatever? And you get these answers that I really felt like you could have just got off Fox News. You know, the prime minister is going to get asked about this stuff and he's going to say, I can't speak too much on the nuclear deals, blah, blah, blah. Considering this was
what he is doing, though, but you have to understand, even the Iran stuff is incredibly relevant because if, as Ken Klippenstein has reported and others have reported, a bunch of B-52s are being mobilized in order to possibly strike Iran, and I said this on the damage report in my like predictions for 2025. I apologize, but I do think we will be bombing Iran openly. The United States will be attacking Iran within the year. That is my feeling. That is what I think is going to happen. Because Netanyahu wants this. Of course, he wants a hot war. So I think also a lot of this is interesting because it's like Netanyahu floating to the lackeys like, hey, you made Ukraine look like they were stuck up and, undeserving of support, or like they were the bad guys. So are you going to make sure that you're going to launder to your big audience us? And honestly, even if his question was ignorant and not correct, it was interesting if Tim Pool actually did ask about growing anti-Israel sentiment. Like that is just a legitimately interesting question, even if it's coming from someone who's super incurious about the world that he reports or discusses, and is also, has platformed anti-Semites himself.
It was Chatham House, and it was expected whatever he said was going to come out. I didn't see anything really substantive. However, in the story, they say, Poole expressed concerns about increased anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in the pro-Trump podcasting space, according to sources in the room. So they weren't there. Poole famously had Kanye West on his podcast, and the rapper walked out mid-interview after Poole pushed back against anti-Semitic comments. Responding to Poole, Netanyahu said that the reason he invited the group is to meet with him. To me? Poole argued...
Wait, is it B-250s, not B-52s? It's not like Rock Lobster? I thought they were just going to like... That's how you win a war, is that you just like play the B-52s endlessly until Iran relents. Because honestly, if I'm Iran, I'm like, fuck that, dude. I fucking hate Rock Lobster.
That there is a Qatari op to manipulate social media algorithms to make anti-Semitic and anti-Israel episodes appear to receive far more views than, say, tips for picking up women, in order to incentivize podcasters and YouTubers to produce more anti-Semitic content. Netanyahu, however, was non-committal in his response, saying that's only possible. Fake news!
How dare you, Tim?
Absolute fake news. It's close to reality, but this is what they do, okay? First, the person who was there clearly...
It's close to reality? Well, how?
...wasn't there. Ask somebody who then conveyed incorrectly what I actually said. I said there has been a report released from pro-Israel sources alleging Qatar is funding bots and operations to promote anti-Israel content. Is there any evidence that's true? And he said, I don't know. It's possible. That's what happened. I did not say they actually were doing that, because I don't know that they're actually doing it. However, I did, to a variety of people, express what I've expressed on this show, that there are clearly bots that are anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. That is not to say that people who are critical of Israel don't exist, or that no one is critical of Israel. People certainly are. So my concern was, and I will say this too, speaking about the meeting, how they discussed Iran, the threat, and all of these things, I feel, based on that meeting, and I don't know if this was their intention or otherwise, that they are absolutely clueless as to what is going on in this country. They are too heavily focused on kinetic, on the ground Israel issues, which I can understand, I guess.
Kinetic,
and my attitude, and I'll tell you one thing I said to them, to these officials: in 10 years, your support will be your support from the U.S. will be evaporating, and in 20 years,
did he say he said that? Hang on.
Support from the U.S. These officials in 10 years issues, which I can understand, I guess. And my attitude, and I'll tell you one thing I said to them.
I call bullshit on him saying this, but okay.
These officials in 10 years, your support will be your support from the U.S. will be evaporating, and in 20 years, you will not have U.S. support. That's what I said. So, and I stand by that. I don't know, when it came to talks about Iran, certainly there was a deep concern, and the general conveyance from the Israelis was, Iran says death to America. You are their principal target. They are upset that the U.S. is exerting power in the region, which they want to exert. So they're coming for you. Israel's an ally of the United States. Israel's an enemy of Iran. Iran wants to crush Israel, and they want to crush the United States. The sentiment being conveyed was, whether the U.S. wants it or not, we will be in a war with Iran, whether we start it or they start it. I'm not...
Ooh, that's exactly what they did. So this is, first of all, look, I think Tim is an idiot, and I would never. I've been very, very grateful to see people like Sam Cedar and Emma Vigeland just like hand him his ass, proving that he is not, again, incurious about the world. But it is interesting that like you do see a man whose like antenna is up, especially after the tenant media debacle where he did or didn't know that he was receiving a bunch of Russian money to launder the Ukrainian war, which honestly, I think it was pretty obvious. It's so stupid to be like, I was a victim. Shut up, man. You ask questions when it's that much money. Clearly, he didn't vet it. And we all heard like his coverage and others' coverage about this. But they're now being buttered up. They just didn't think. I don't know if the Jewish Insider article came out before or after him tweeting that, but I don't know if he would have openly discussed that a foreign ally wanted a meeting with him, right? Like that's not a good look necessarily if you're kind of a, low information MAGA chud who's like, generally isolationist and idiotic. Like that's not, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you're much more like America first, but like, I'm not going to say that, but like I platform Nazis, but I'm not one, like that's, so it's weird to reveal like, why were you in this meeting? What was there money? Was there a promise? But it sounds like it was a like, look, we're going to be in a war. He just said that we're going to be in a war, whether we like it or not, whether the United States likes it or not. So can you help us launder this war for us? And there could be money in it for you, possibly. I do think it's interesting that he's saying like, there's not going to be support for Israel in 10 to 20 years. And he might be saying that from a right-wing perspective. We don't want like another war. If there are no boots on the ground, maybe. But generally, it's not a popular thing. Or, hey, some of the actual anti-Semites on the right, like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, are calling out Israel. They don't like Israel. And I'm starting to see that they're making sense, right? Like because I see with my eyes, I understand that the genocide is massively unpopular. Again, low information folks, random, especially young people, and they go on to talk about that. Like, it's kind of just interesting to see, like, it's like, a mouthpiece makes his moves. A mouthpiece is like, where do I stand, even though I believe in nothing? Unclear, but this is my assessment. Maybe even people in his chat, maybe even people who, watch his show are like, I don't like Israel. They probably also, again, have a slew of anti-Semitic, baggage on top of that, which is why it is so important to listen to and to make sure that Jews are leading this movement along with Arabs and Muslims and Palestinians specifically. But like, if we can all be involved and support, organizations like If Not Now and Jews for Peace, Jewish Voice for Peace, like, that is our task, because the loud anti-Semites are going to start collapsing, are going to start putting pieces together, and are going to suck up all of the air in this room. I mean, Marjorie Greene is also sort of on remember her when she got prickly at the whole, anti-Semitism, calling Jews murderers of Jesus. That's anti-Semitic. And she's like, but Jews did murder Jesus. Like that's... So again, we're in this moment, which is so upsetting because it reveals how democratic leadership, progressive leadership, even organizational leadership has been such a zero when it comes to a real anti-militaristic lane, a peace lane, if you will, for the left to get loud. Instead, you've got these dumb mouthpieces who are just knee-jerk isolationists who of course don't support Ukrainian sovereignty. And of course, but like the other side is not good. The other side is like, yeah, the Israelis are the Ukrainians. Nah, girl, you got it all twisted. So I don't know. I think this is fascinating to me, though. It's fascinating to see like what the right wing is being groomed for, what they are being told, because it gives us an insight into where Israel's headed. Oh my God, good question. Kowalchuk, what's your favorite Tim Pool song, dude? I don't even know. It depends on like what mood I'm in. Like, do I want to like I'm sorry. I was gonna say something. Do I want like my pussy to dry up? You know, like, you know, depends on how dry I want to get. Benjamin Morrill, thanks for the super chat. If you need a laugh or maybe a puke, old school news, but I just read this. Trump used to send flowers to Princess Diana. He tried to get her to come see him so he could do what he did to E. Jean Carroll, not on topic, but dear God. Oh, yeah, of course. Because Princess Diana was like 90s, 80s. Like that was like her, she was like, you know, again, princess, beautiful. Everybody wanted to be her. Everybody wanted to be with her. Benjamin Morrill, thank you also for giving that sub. Did we go to, did I close down? I've been trying to get on to, God damn it, Twitch. Damn you, Twitch. There'll be a lot of shout outs on Tuesday. Simple looks like a sugar in a sugar plum. I don't know. He does look like the like ugliest guy in the ska band though, you know? But apparently he's got family, so it's good for him. Anyway, that has been the show, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. I gotta bounce. I gotta skedaddle. Hey, consider becoming a patron. Get access to the bonus episodes every Wednesday. You can listen back to them. We've done a bunch of them. You get a beautiful little rainbow RSS feed, like a rainbow icon in your RSS feed, whatever that means to you. You can also subscribe on Substack, support the show, and all the wonderful people that I have on. Again, it really goes a long way as I sort of dangle and figure out where I'm at here. Look at how cute that is. Oh my God, if you're listening, it's like really cute. Thank you for your super chats. Thanks for becoming a member as well. I will see you on Tuesday with a brand new spanking show. It'll be so good. Until then, fight the power, fuck the patriarchy, free Palestine. Come see me on May 7th at Cobb's Comedy with Matt Lieb and on April 23rd at the Ice House in Pasadena with Gareth Reynolds and also Matt Lieb. Until Tuesday, bye-bye.